Hello and welcome to CEO Insights from Quantum Leaders. This is Vitaly Gieman, and today we're going to talk about the living organization and how it applies particularly to developing the right culture, the right team dynamics, the collaboration within the team, and also how it all relates to hiring the right people and retaining the right people. Now, conventionally, a lot of the times, what I hear is this from executives: let us first hire the right people, and then you come in, and then you develop the people and make sure they perform at the right level. And that's the order of things that very often that I hear, is that we're not quite ready to develop the team. First, we have to hire the team. And typically, what I ask them is, listen, what is it that the problem in the first place? Why did you lose the previous people in the first place? And how do you retain? How do you create a high retention culture? And most organizations don't really have an answer to that. They just say, well, it's the market is tough, people are leaving. The reality, of course, is yes, that is true. Certainly, it's the market issue as well. A lot of people are looking for different jobs, and they can do it because the market is available to them. But also, it's very much around how we designed our organization in the first place, and the kind of stickiness we have, where the people are really feel like they belong to the organization. They have an invested interest in staying there because they developed their career, and they really feel at home in that organization, and they're the right people for the right roles. So there's many reasons, right, why people leave. The question is not about that, right? That's a whole other issue to discuss. What I want to discuss to you is that it is a business process driven decision. Very often we abdicate this whole thing to HR or OD, and we think that they will fix this problem called people, and then we go on with determining our business objective. And that is not true. What I want to show you here is the process we did develop called the road mapping process. Now, the process is fairly standard, but it's just a way of explaining to you why we start all of these people issues from the business perspective. We are, as being a CEO and chief operating officer, as an executive, I realized that we kind of got it wrong. We separated the bifurcated people issues from the business issues. And what we need to do is back to reintegrate it. And when we've done that, we had much more effective results, business results. And so we do start with saying, what are the business objective? What are the measurable outcomes do you want to create in your organization, in your team, in your division, right? We want to increase performance by that much. We want to increase operational effectiveness, we'll increase sales. Whatever the results are, we need to quantify them. And I'm sure most of you have that. That's not a problem. We have our KPIs, particularly if you work for large organizations. For some small organizations, it's a little bit unclear. Particularly, it's unclear at the mid-level management, right? Maybe the CEO knows what's going on, but at the middle level, it's not, the objectives are not quite measurable and clear, right? So first, we need to get a very crystal clear idea of what are these outcomes. We want to grow by 2 stores a year. We want to our customers, if you're an internal unit, say administration or financial or so on, we want to measure our service level by this much. And this is how we're going to know when we're actually serving the organization, our internal customer, right? So whatever it is has to be quantified and make sense and achievable, right? So that's the first thing we start. And then we work backwards, you see, to determine what strategy we need to adopt. How we're going to actually serve our customers. Now, our customer is the internal, right? Who are our customers and what do they need from us, right? For us to be able to achieve those objectives. What strategies we adopt over here very clearly, what objective, and only then can we determine is what do we need to develop the people, and what kind of people do we need, what kind of emotional maturity, Do we need, in general, professional maturity? How do we need to train them if there is a gap, right? So it's driven by the business initiatives and the customer, then the strategy, and then we need to identify what kind of behaviors do we need to actually achieve this strategy, what kind of emotional maturity, what kind of professional maturity I was saying, and then what kind of mindset and what kind of story, what kind of behind that, who do they need to be, right, to be able to exemplify those behaviors? Because you see, it is who we're being, right, exemplifies the behavior. Let me maybe give you a little bit more practical example, because it is hard to explain. If let's say you're a salesperson, right, and if your worldview is, I'm not going to chase people for sales. I'm a highly technically qualified sales engineer. When I come, I will explain in my product, but I'm not out there to go and chase people for sales. And we had that situation. That's your worldview. Now, if your objective is create an outbound sales force to increase being proactively going out there getting new customers versus just relying on what the leads are coming in, and you have a whole strategy for that, then the person with that mindset will be suffering and will not do the job. And it's exactly what happened. The people that we worked with, they were not picking up the phone to do the call because they are highly qualified engineers that believe they don't chase people. And so their whole mindset, how they view the world, were not fitting into the behavior that we needed, which is much more proactive outbound salespeople, which means it jeopardized the strategy, the outbound strategy, which means we never achieved our outbound sales, right? So we start with this and we work backwards, and because if you hire people from here, and are here to speak to a lot of people, say, well, we're hiring the right people, we're assessing, and so yes, but if you put them back in the same old environment with the same old strategies, the same infrastructure that you already had, you're going to get the same, most likely, you're going to get the same results you were getting before, which is, in this case, particularly in this case study, even if you hire the person with kind of more outbound sales, but we don't have the right strategies, the right infrastructure for them, the right lead generation system, so that they can actually at least get a cold lead and then go follow it up. If you don't provide for that structure, then what you're hiring is people into an old environment, and unfortunately, then even if they have the mindset, they will behave in most likely in the same way the old people have, because the structure, the culture, the environment is so strong, it will gravitate them back to the old behavior, right? And you're going to get the old results, and you're going to be frustrated even though you hired the right people. So that's one thing. If, on the other hand, if you also your hiring practices over here, right? Let's say you did develop this strategy and you master clear and you have a new environment, but if your hiring strategy does not take into account fully the maturity required, the mindset, and you're not assessing people for that, then again you're going to have a problem, because now you have a new structure, a new environment, or at least modified, designed, redesigned environment, but the people are still not quite a good fit. Right. And this is a very tricky part, because conventionally we use EQ analysis and all those questionnaires. And the truth is, people are way too smart. They answer the right questions for you. And then when you hire them, you see a very different person, right? So how do we do this thing called hiring people for new environments, for new mindset? Well, what we found is that we need to have a much more comprehensive maturity development analysis, right? And this is why we developed a whole different way of assessing people's maturity. We'll look at leadership maturity on the 5 different scales, right? We'll look at people maturity, and we'll look at a business maturity, business model and process maturity. So it's not just leadership, right? So with leadership, we look at whether they're directive or command control kind of style, or whether they're more situational leadership, where they can actually be more flexible in different situations. where and ultimately can I be much more context driven, and can I be developed as a whole person? Do they have flexibility in changing their leadership style? Do they understand how to work with the whole ecosystems within the organization or outside? Right, so they're very much in collaborative mode with many other people, and they understand. Do they have improvisational mindset? Can they be more flexible and experiment and not be afraid of failure? Right? Now obviously this is the high-end skills, and it's not easy to assess a person on at this level. So what we do yes, we still do a survey, a quantitative and qualitative survey, but then particularly for the senior people, we do a one-on-one interview, where I'm a leadership assessor. I can literally sense, as well as I can ask them difficult questions and see how they behave, if they're defensive, right, if they're protective, and ego driven, versus whether they're open and can actually in the moment self-reflect and respond to me in a more positive way. And even if they say, I don't know how to answer this question, so are they okay with not knowing? So I will very often, particularly for senior leaders, I will get a very accurate assessment of their potential in terms of their EQ and their mindset only by one-on-one interview. So it's a combination of getting some data analysis, but not relying on that data. This is what conventional hiring processes do, is they just rely on those 20 questions. And then if it's really a sensitive position, a high-level position, we do a one-on-one personal interview. And the business manager needs to do this. You cannot relegate this to a young HR professional who doesn't have the business experience, because only in your gut, with your gut feel, as well as your intellectual knowledge, if they're mature enough to take on a truly leadership role. The same thing with people, right? We need to be able to assess people's maturity. Are they just task-oriented, technical people? You tell me what to do, I'll do it. Very much black and white thinking. Yeah, require a lot of stability. If your environment is exactly the opposite, you need people to think on their feet, to be able more dynamic, to make their own decisions, right? Then we have a problem right here. At the very top of the level, what we're looking for is people who are into continuous learning, obviously embracing change, thrive in a change environment, very much a growth mindset, right? Again, a manager needs to be trained, not a HR person. A manager needs to be trained how to assess the people they're hiring based on those criteria. And once again, also the business process. Even if you have the phenomenal people and leaders, if your business process and your environment and your doesn't really cater for those kind of people, they will suffer, right? And you know that. So we need to consciously design a much more participative decision-making environment, management by objectives. We need to find the right balance between centralized and decentralized decision-making, right? Look at how much self-organizing do you need, how entrepreneurial the environment should be, right? And how much driven by the customer value. So all of that is really creating an environment, the right environment for people to step into. So combination of environment, the right depth of hiring practices, really understanding the people's motivations and how they think, and being very hands-on from a business manager point of view, understanding how this all fits within your business strategy are the three, I believe, when you get all that right, when you get all of that right, you have a phenomenal infrastructure to shift the organization to a new level, right? If any one of those are not quite there, this is where most likely will be the weakness, and this is where most likely will be the failure of this process, right? And then you have to come back to it and again see if you can close that gap. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed that this presentation. If you want me to actually sit with you on your specific situation, whether you have a small team or large team, it doesn't matter. We will sit down with you and go through this process, right? As I've done for many companies, we will go through this process and see how it could potentially work for you.